Thank you for having me today. It's really nice to join you. I'm hoping that I'll be able to present something interesting to the members. My name is Natalija Jovanovic. I am currently the Global Head of Digital for Vaccines at Sanofi. I've spent my time in a variety of heavily regulated industries, and I'm an engineer by training from MIT. So today, I'm hoping to speak with you about not cracking under pressure. So Ginger, if we can go to the title slide, please.
Okay, well, give me a minute and I will pull up your slides. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Take it away. Thank you.
Now, when we say don't crack under pressure, there are two different types of cracking. There is the types of cracking due to pressure that is from just having too much to do, right? And then there's the type of cracking that is due to specific triggers. There is a lot of writing and a lot of good advice on both of those. Today, I'm going to focus more on cracking due to specific triggers, but of course, happy to take any questions on cracking under pressure from just too much workload as well at the end. So if we go to the next slide, the only thing that I would add about my history is that I've lived in former Yugoslavia, New Jersey, Illinois, but it feels at home in Massachusetts. So I'm really glad to spend time with Boston women and seeing how we can help each other. If we go to the next slide, we can take a look at what are some steps of cracking and how to address each and one of them. Over many years, what I noticed is that I have some cracking tips. There are first signs of cracking that if I spot them on time, I can help myself handle the situation better. And then the second topic is that we all have some cracking triggers, right? We all have those topics that just get under our skin, but we can build new reflexes to those topics. And finally, we can practice creative responses to those cracking situations. So if we go to the next slide, I just wanted to share with you a picture that I find inspiring, that we are all a beautiful creation of nature. So here's this beautiful eggshell with a little drawing on it. But eventually pressures or triggers add up so much that they have a risk to bring us into a state that we're no longer ourselves. So if we go to the next page, I'd love to talk with you about what are your first signs of cracking, right? I know that we can't see each other, but if you have a piece of paper or if you just want to make a mental list, what do you feel like when you're about to crack? And you can do this either for those cracking triggers or for cracking under too much workload. For me, when I'm cracking due to some stressor, some trigger, I have this intense feeling of being surprised. I find myself in disbelief at what I'm observing that is going on. And I know that this is the first thing to watch out for, because the next things that I say, I have to say very carefully because I'm already in a heightened stress state. Of course, cold hands, feeling the grip that my whole body is tense and the fast heartbeat. And then if I'm overwhelmed by a lot of things, I find myself that I have lack of energy for basic things, such as making myself a smoothie to keep myself healthy. So take a moment to just write down a few of your signs. What does your body tell you before you're about to crack? Just give you a moment to think about it or to write it down. I hope that was a helpful pause to reflect on your own self. But if we go to the next slide, we can think about what are some cracking triggers for ourselves, right? We know how we feel when we are triggered and when we are cracking, but what are some topics that are likely to cause us to crack? Now, of course, he said there are two different types of cracking. One is just too much workload, and that is a trigger. But the other could be something that somebody says or does. And for me, unfairness in judgment or making a lot of assumptions are definitely a cracking trigger. I am a person who relies a lot on logic and facts, And so when somebody says something that has a lot of inference or a lot of assumption in it, it can trigger my cracking mechanism. The second thing that really gets under my skin is aggression, anger, or pejorative, disrespectful language. And finally, especially if that language or that kind of emotion is directed at marginalization of minority groups of individuals. So as you see some of these examples here, think about what are those topics that you know are just going to get under your skin, raise your blood pressure, make you feel like you need to be on a defensive. Just take a moment to reflect on those. Thank you. Now, if we move on, Ginger, the reason why I go through these two phases is because it's so much easier to hold ourselves whole or together if we know what are the triggers and what are the early signs. And I found this picture online. It's a beautiful wooden bowl, but it has here in red highlighted where the crack is starting. And when you know where the crack is starting, you can take preventive measures to prevent it from turning into something catastrophic. So if we go to the next slide, let's talk about some reflexes that we can develop in order to help us when we sense that a cracking situation is coming up. And again, if you want to focus on not cracking under too much workload, you can do this exercise as well, or you can do it based on cracking triggers. So what are some reflexes that you could develop to mitigate cracking, right? For example, if the cracking is due to too much workload, we know that self-care really matters. So it's difficult to make time for self-care when you have too much to do, but we know that it really helps, right? Now, here are my reflexes when I feel like I'm cracking due to certain triggers, right? The first one is to take perspective. I am tempted to react in the moment, but I know that I need to save my energy perhaps for more important things. And the reflex that I had to develop is that not every battle is worth fighting immediately, no matter how important, no matter how critical it is for my beliefs and my values. It also helps me to remember who I am, right? That if a difficulty is coming my way, I try to remember that I have overcome many difficulties already. And no matter what stage of career we're in, there will be difficulties. And I'm not kidding you, but I still sometimes stand in front of a mirror in the bathroom at a difficult time, look at myself in the mirror and say, you're going to be okay, right? And of course, I call my best friends and for support and for consultation as well. And the third thing that helps me stay grounded is remembering who comes after me. When I demonstrate resilience, calm, staying grounded in the moment, I'm not only demonstrating it for myself, but for anyone else who shares any characteristics with me. So I'm an Eastern European woman. I have dark hair. I'm relatively short. So when I stay calm and grounded, I create a positive resilience impression for anyone who resembles me in the eyes of my counterparts in the conversation or in the situation. So I hope that I gave you time to reflect on some of your own ways to recenter and regain energy. So if we move on to the next slide, Ginger, please. Thank you. What are some creative responses to cracking triggers, right? I often do an exercise thinking, how would someone who I admire respond to this situation instead of getting upset, instead of shutting down, instead of feeling overwhelmed, right? And I think of my mentors, some of our favorite leaders. I have a couple of actresses who I admire quite a bit, and they give me some unusual inspirations for how I could deal with different situations. So to give you an example, and this is often an early career question that women come to me with, what do I do if someone gets angry with me in a meeting, right? Oftentimes we freeze because we're in a little bit of a disbelief that someone could get so angry or belligerent in a meeting, or that someone could berate another colleague. And what I did many times is I practiced with my friends or colleagues, what do I do if someone starts being really angry in a meeting? So the practice response, the reflex that I've developed is, this topic is of high importance for both of us. You seem upset. Let's have a more effective conversation about it at another time. Would next week work for you? Or I have Tuesday afternoon free. How about we recoup then? Like I said, this is the first stage response, right? And this is my first attempt to notify the person that their behavior is starting to be out of range for a professional situation. If they keep getting angry, then I will often say, you seem to have gotten really angry about this. It doesn't seem like we can have a good conversation about this at this time. I will be glad to find a time in your calendar when we can revisit this, or you can let me know what works for you. And if they keep going, yes, there have been situations where I have gotten out of my chair and said, this conversation is not helping us solve the problem. I will be in touch, and walked out of the room. Which feels really difficult and is very unusual, but it helps us protect ourselves from that negative emotional state that the other person is trying to drag us into. And honestly, a lot of people realized what they were doing just a few minutes later. There was one very senior colleague with whom I had to do this, and 30 minutes later, he came to find me at my desk, and he said, hey, I guess I was getting really agitated in that meeting. And I said, it just didn't seem like a good time to solve the problem. And so then we went out for coffee, and he apologized, and it came out in a pretty good way. Now, I hope that with all of these strategies, what we can do is that when we are cracking, we don't think of it as a destructive process. But Ginger, if we can go to the next slide, I hope that every situation, oh, I think we're missing a slide. Can you go back one step, please? Oh, okay, we lost a beautiful picture of the third picture of a bowl that has, instead of cracks, it has cracks that are painted with gold, right? This is a Japanese technique of repair. And what I wanted to share with you is that whenever you have a cracking situation, don't think of it as a destructive process, right? Think of it as a way to grow, as a way to build new experiences, build new resiliences, and it's going to be difficult. As my kids sometimes like to say, Mom, this sucks, right? But at the same time, it is how we grow, and it is how we develop new items. So Ginger, we can go to the final slide now, the do it together slide. My recommendation is to not go this road alone. This road is so much better with company, so much better with partners. Think about, could you recruit a few people into your journey against cracking, right? Could you ask people to help you spot before you crack? If you are not sure on that first exercise that we did, what are your signs of cracking? Go and ask someone you trust, right? Ask them, how do you know that I'm not doing well? What shows out of me that helps you spot that things are not okay? And then you can together identify your cracking triggers. And as you think about your life, it will come to you. Oh, I got really upset when X, Y, and Z happened. Or I got really overwhelmed when somebody did this, right? Or when I had this many assignments, right? Ask another group of people to remind you of who you are when you're at your best resilient self. Now, I know it feels a little bit like an exercise in vanity, and we're all trying to be humble, but there's nothing wrong with understanding what are your strengths. Who are you when you are calm, when you are grounded, when you know who you are, right? So my challenge to you is to put a reminder in your calendar once per quarter, or once per month if you need it more frequently, to reach out to someone and ask them, hey, tell me about a good experience that you had with me. What is your favorite memory with me? And it could be friends or it can be professional colleagues. And this is the hardest part about role-playing, how to respond to cracking situations in advance. It can be very comical. Sometimes I practice with my kids and they laugh and they say, Mom, why are you practicing so much? Aren't you a grown-up who doesn't need to pretend anymore? And I tell them this is how we learn. This is how we practice. It can sound silly. You don't have to do it with another person. You can just do it in your head. You can do it before you just drift off to sleep, hopefully. I hope that you enjoyed this conversation. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. My only ask of you is that if you have gotten any good advice out of this presentation, please pay it forward to the next generation, regardless of gender, men, women, non-binary colleagues. Everyone deals with cracking pressures. And I hope that together we can continue to enhance how we deal with cracking situations by paying it forward. Ginger, I hope that wasn't too fast and that we now have time for a few questions.
Yes, we definitely have some questions. So if anybody would like to ask Natalija a live question, if you could just use the raise your hand feature and I can unmute you. But if not, please keep those questions coming into our chat. So I'll start with this first one from Anna. And Anna says, any advice on recovery after you crack? I don't want to take it home with me.
That's an excellent question. I have two responses to that, actually. One is a story from early stages of memes and social media. There was a story about a plumber who was really complimented often by his family, how calm he is, how he never brings any work problems back at home. And of course, he's a plumber. He had plenty of problems. He had non-paying customers, he had leaks, he had all kinds of things happen in his workplace. And when he got old, he finally admitted how he was keeping all of the work stuff separate from home. He said that before he walked into the house, he would always touch a leaf on a bush or a tree in front of the house. And that was his symbol for leaving his work-related worries outside of the home. And he said not only that helped him keep the worries outside of the home, but the next morning when he came out, he saw that the tree was still the tree, even though he left his worries with the tree or the bush, right? So it's a little bit of a comical situation. What I try to do is, instead of leaving my work worries completely out of the workplace, completely out of the home, Anna, what I try to do is I try to think about, is there someone in my home who could benefit from knowing a little bit about what happened to me today? I have two daughters, and I don't want them to think that my work life is without any pressures or issues. So I try to set aside 5 minutes before I go home from this office, from this room in my home to another room in my home. I try to set aside 5 minutes to ask myself, in what happens today that I might not want to take home, is there some lesson that I can turn into a positive for someone in my home? Now, if you're living alone or if you don't wish to do that, of course, there's nothing wrong with packaging those worries and saying, this is my work life. It is not a reflection of who I am as a personality. And I can come back to it in the morning. Of course, I wake up in the middle of the night, just like everyone else, with the work worries. But I hope that helped, Anna. Thank you so much for the question.
All right, I think we have two more questions, and then we'll ask you for some final thoughts.
Okay.
This one came from Brooke, and she said, my cracking trigger is that I'm always struggling with the balance of work and kids. It's not solvable or really changeable, but how do you manage something so daily repetitive, but at the same time so insanely valuable?
Well, Brooke, if we solve that problem, we can write a lot of good books. Thank you for the question. Try to find a method that resonates with you. There are hundreds of suggestions out there, and as we all know, there is no shortage of unsolicited advice when you are a parent or when you are a woman trying to balance career and home. What works for me are two things. One is deciding what are the things that matter to me and sticking to that. It makes me feel like an outlier many times when I see how much other moms take their kids to gymnastics and dance and sports, etc. It makes me feel like an outlier because I prioritize just sitting on the couch and snuggling with my kids while eating chocolate ice cream as many days of the year as we can, right? But this, reflect on what matters to you really and why, and then focus on that. And other things you can solve in many different ways. I I have a friend who grew up in the Eastern European culture, just like I did. And in many Eastern European homes, you do not hire someone else to clean for you. You just don't. But she and I worked on it, and we said, look, this is a value of our culture, but that value had severe consequences in her health because she was trying to clean, she was trying to have a spotless home with 2 little toddlers and so on. And what we ended up concluding is that it's far more valuable for her to have her health and her time with the kids than to stick to this notion that if someone else cleans your home, you're not a good person, right? So, Brooke, I hope that this is helpful. I'm happy to follow up with you later on. Please contact me on LinkedIn. This is a struggle for so many women, and I'm happy to try to find something that works for you in your personal situation rather than give you more generalities. If you're struggling with repetition, one thing that you may want to include is that humans by nature, by biology, learn from repetition. So repetition is the most reassuring thing that you can offer to your kids when they're very young, right? This is how we build a sense of security and a sense of self through the repetition, even though for grown-ups, it's not very exciting. So you're very welcome, Brooke. Thank you for your question.
We'll let this be our last question, and then we'll ask you for some final thoughts. And this one says, I don't like to show weakness. How can I ask for help? I don't have a trust level with my new coworkers, and I'm new to this position.
Oh, Cassie, that's a fantastic question. First of all, to me, asking for help is a sign of tremendous self-awareness and courage. It is just so deeply connected to showing that we know where we are, we know who we are, we know what we know, and then it's also a show of courage to approach someone who you might not trust, but it's also a show of trust. So my recommendation for you is to build a broader set of potential sources of help, right? I don't know what your job is. Again, feel free to contact me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to help. But in any job, there are a lot of resources outside of the immediate coworkers, right? I'm making a wild guess, but just about any job these days, there are TikTok videos, there are YouTube videos, any computer system that you need to use is available online. And even for things that are maybe specific to the company, such as a particular policy, there are a lot of policies that are similar across companies. So I would, let's say you're dealing with an internal audit, you're not sure how to proceed with an internal audit in your own workplace. You can go online and say, search what are the steps to deal with an internal audit? How can I complete it most efficiently and so on? So forgive me the wild guessing, but happy to connect with you on LinkedIn. And Ginger, thank you so much for moderating the questions.
Well, thank you so much. So before we move to our next presentation, do you have any final thoughts for our listeners today?
2 thoughts. It's a journey, right? And that journey requires a lot of energy. So the best thing that you can do with that energy is to use it for something constructive. Please don't use your energy to feel guilty, to belittle yourself, or to say, I could have done this better over and over in your head. It's useful to have some self-reflection, a few minutes on, well, I could have done that better, or I really messed that up, so next time I should do it differently. But don't dwell on it, don't obsess on it. Use the energy that you have for something constructive, for something enjoyable. Even if you feel like you've messed up everything, go out for an ice cream, go join a friend for a walk, paint something. That's a better use of your energy, and it helps with the psychological recovery from that situation. And the second thought is that life is a mixture, right? And there will always be elements that are difficult. And what I say to myself is I try to remember the number 51%, right? 51% means that things are still okay and positive, and the other 49% will vary over time in terms of content. But try to remember that there are many positive things in you, in your environment, in this journey of life. And I hope that you will reach out and we'll connect so that we can make it even better for each other.
Well, thank you so much for your time. And everyone, Natalija is going to hang out with us later, and she's going to be part of our panel discussion. So thank you so much.